This is the on your system.
Hey, how are you? order the Historic Preservation Board meeting of April 6, 2023. Glancing online, do we possibly have Chaplain Mulberry with us today?
He is.
It is. Yay, would you care to get us started, sir?
Good evening, everyone. Father, we thank you once again for your loving kindness and for the multitude of your tender mercy. We thank you for all your many benefits and blessings that you bestowed upon us. We pray, God, your blessing upon this people this morning, that you will bless this gathering this evening. God, we thank you for your kindness. We pray for your directions, your guidance, and your instructions, and all that we undergird to do. Bless us in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
We can continue to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, led by Mr. Beaton.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Our roll call, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mr. Larry Beaton,
Present.
Mr. Christopher Hollister.
Here.
We have a new board member joining us today, Mr. Timothy Jefferson,
Present.
Miss Brianna Pierce.
Present.
Noted for the record, the Patty vote is an excused absence, so we have our alternate member, Mary Jane Rosa, here. Present. Mr. Alan Sheffield, our vice chair,
Present.
and our chair, Elizabeth Emmonsford.
Present.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. On to the appeal procedures and the part-time communication. Notice any person wishing to appeal any decision made by the Historic Preservation Board with respect to any matter considered at such meeting will need a record of the proceedings, and for such purpose may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceedings is made, which record includes the testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based. Florida Statute 286.0105. Ex parte communication, members? Nope, 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 and no. Moving along, we go to item 1C, which is the swearing in ceremony for Timothy Jefferson as member and Mary Jane Rosa as alternate member. I'll turn to staff.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. If I can ask Mr. Jefferson and Ms. Rosa to please rise and raise their right hands. And if you would repeat after me, I know this is a little bit long, so if you want to look at your cheat sheet, you're more than welcome to. I, Mr. Jefferson and Ms. Rosa. I, Mary Jane Rosa.
I, Timothy Jefferson,
A Historic Preservation Board appointee of the Palatka City Commission.
A Historic Preservation Board appointee of the Palatka City Commission.
yes, I'm sorry, Historic Preservation Board appointee at Palatka City Commission,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
I will faithfully perform the duties of my appointed office
I will faithfully perform the duties of my office
and will support and honor,
Support and honor.
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability
all applicable laws of the state of Florida,
all applicable laws of the state of Florida,
Putnam County,
Putnam County,
and the city of Palatka.
city of Palatka.
I hereby through this oath
I hereby through this oath
affirm that I will perform
affirm that I will perform
the duties of this public trust
The duties of
the duties of public trust
in a fair, equitable, and ethical
in a fair, equitable, and ethical
manner befitting the dignity
manner befitting the dignity
and responsibilities of the office.
and responsibilities of the office.
Madam Chair and members of the Historic Preservation Board, please join me in welcoming Ms. Rosa and Ms. Rosa and Mr. Jefferson.
Thank you. Moving on to our agenda, item 2, the approval of the minutes of the March 2nd, 2023 meeting. Do we have any changes, corrections? No? If not, motion to approve.
Move.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? The minutes are approved for our March 2nd, 2023 meeting. Moving on to agenda item 3, public comments. This is not this. This is something that has nothing to do with agenda items, and speakers are limited to 3 minutes. No action will be taken on items. So we will open the public comment. And close it again. Moving on to agenda item 4, regular business, we begin with item A, which is HPB case 2308, a request for a certificate of appropriateness to replace concrete tile, mill finish roof or metal roof paint and install wood guardrail to the porch. The owners are Brian Taracano and Jennifer Thompson. The address is 422 River Street, Palatka, Florida, and the parcel number is very long. Would we like to begin with staff comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you've already noted, this is a request to replace the concrete tile roof with a metal roof and change the paint color and install a wood railing on the porch.
The slide that we have is a different structure, I think.
Am I the
Yes,
wrong
it
one?
is.
Oh, I'm at the wrong one. Sorry, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right one?
You might want to go down to the more modern photograph, because it looks so more recognizable. Farther down, please.
Further down?
That one. Yeah, there's so much. For the master site file, a large colonial revival home was built between 1902 and 1905. The roof material at that time was composition stick shingles, as noted in the Florida master site file. The bilateral lift cemetery, large double entrance home occupies a prominent corner lot facing the St. Johns River. It was conveyed in 1905 from Mary Dunn to Henry Ham, as one of Palatka's most prominent citizens. Mr. Ham was at various times vice president and manager of the W.A. Merryday Company, president of the Atlantic Grocery Company, president of the Hastings Potato Growers Association. And that building still stands in Hastings. It's pretty cool. It's also for sale. And owner of H.O. Ham Properties, a real estate development firm. In the 1880s, Ham served as a principal of Black schools and later as principal of Duval High School, then the largest secondary school in the state. Ham was also city councilman for 1 term. The home was occupied during the 40s and 50s by Jerome Easton, principal of Palatka High School. From information provided by the current owner given to them by previous owners, Babe Ruth lived in the home during winter training in 1933 and 34. Are you all familiar with where the house is? Okay. The applicant has provided staff with product styles and pictures for the materials proposed. It's shown in the exhibit below in the staff report. And if you could, I'm sorry, could you roll back up to the older pictures so you can see that the original roof was shingles.
Let me see if I can get them on the same. There you go.
Okay, there you go. And then now we can go down through the materials if you like. This is the proposed color for the home. And these are the product proposed for the porch railings. And this metal roof. It will be silver in color. Okay. Some of these, well, the paint is something that staff can approve at the staff level. However, the railings and the roof is not something that staff could approve. Therefore, this whole thing comes before you. I would direct your attention that the original roof was shingles. And then, of course, the concrete tile was probably not consistent with the historic style of the house, but that's what's been on there for a while. And they are proposing to replace it with a metal roof. And I'd ask you to consider that in your decisions. But I would also recommend, staff would also recommend that we approve a certificate of appropriateness for this structure and request with any conditions on the roof material as you may see fit. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
It looks to me that that the handrails would be replaced by wooden handrails, but in the photo that I looked at a little bit larger, they looked at that they might be vinyl or plastic.
Are you, which picture are you referring to?
On page 6.
Yes.
Page 6 is a wooden railing. Treated wood.
But then page 7, go to. I think that's showing the roof, not the railing.
Yes, that's.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes,
All right. Okay, yeah, that's okay.
it does definitely look like plastic or whatever.
Thank you. That was my only question. Board members, questions of staff?
I have a question. What is the color of the roof?
Silver.
The tile that hasn't been over there from what I read over 50 years,
No, I
right?
don't
If
think, I don't
the
think so.
80s or something. And so that doesn't fit that. So then, okay, all right.
Comes close though.
Yeah, it's gotta be close. I just wanted.
To me, the 80s wasn't that long ago.
Madam Chair, I'll remain silent.
Because they didn't that the truth. Okay, are the homeowners or their representatives here with us today? Everyone is pointing at someone. Would you like to come up and chat with us and let us know what you're thinking? And
I mean, not really.
well, I don't believe you have to, although, like, do we have any questions for them? Of course. You know, if you wouldn't mind, we promise, we don't mind. Just come on up, and if you would, state your name and address for the record, please.
Jen Thompson, 422 River Street.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jen Thompson, 422 River Street.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hi, I believe Mr. Deacon had a question for you.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I couldn't be more pleased than to see your request to remove those tiles from that house. They look so inappropriate for that house. And I'm so glad to see that. I'm hoping
Also, the brick is really bad, but
a future project, when you get the funds, is going to include removing the brick facade. from the
I would like
I
to.
suspected it would be, but, I said, and my other question is the siding vinyl or is that wood?
That's aluminum.
It's aluminum siding.
Yeah, I don't know when,
Yeah, are you looking at possibly removing that at some point in the future?
maybe at some point.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
Anyhow.
if we took the brick off, yes, then we would take everything off.
You can see from, I'm sure you probably have copies of some of these old pictures, but you can see.
I done most of.
Yeah, do you have a copy of that postcard of the three houses?
Yeah,
From
yeah, I have that.
1912? Yeah, so you can see what a beautiful house it was when it didn't have all that facade and when it had a normal roof for the period on it. So I'm very delighted, but I was hoping you were going to say that this is the first phase of maybe some additional projects for the house, because it's a beautiful house. Thank you. See, you thought this was going to be bad.
No.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I've got a question. Looking at the railings, when you put the railings up, are you gonna have it so the rails are on the inside or the outside of the,
I mean, whatever looks better. I feel like probably the inside looks better.
yeah, if it's flipped around from the picture, so the railings are in.
I had a hard time finding what I wanted, like, to submit. They'll be custom. I mean, whatever you guys think would look better, honestly, like, I'm fine with. I had a hard time finding a picture.
Okay.
Hey,
If possible, because it is the picture you mentioned in terms of the three homes, if possible, getting it as close to what that picture reflected and it's a more original or stayed there would be a preferred.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you guys want to give me some money. You know.
I know. That was it for me.
Thank you very much. Right, as we know, staff recommendation on this agenda item is for approval of a certificate of appropriateness for 422 River Street. Do we have discussion amongst the board or are we ready to,
Madam Chair, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak to this?
sorry about that. I always miss something and it's usually important. Would anyone like to speak to this application? No? Okay, discussing amongst ourselves, would we like to split up the railings versus the roof, or are we feeling pretty positive about addressing both at the same time? I leave it to you. We have a,
I move that we accept, approve the certificate of appropriateness, as presented.
thank you.
I second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reza. All right, we have a first and a second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Fantastic, motion carries, and welcome to the neighborhood. Moving on to item B, HPV case 2311, request for certificate of appropriateness to replace porch and railing after the fact. The owner is John Wagner. The address is 417 North 3rd Street, Palatka, Florida. The personal number is very long. Staff, if you would, please get us started.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, happy here.
What's that, John?
My name is Sunshine Moon, 911. So the case HPD 2311, per the Florida Master Site Plan. The residence was constructed in 1884, between 1884 and 1886. The resident contributes to the character of the well-defined historic residential neighborhood. 417 North 3rd Street is within a neighborhood of other large frame dwellings along 3rd Street during the last quarter of the 19th century. The application request, the owner is requesting a certificate of appropriateness after the fact. The owner stated that he replaced about 95% of the porch and the porch railing without a permit. The work was completed in an attempt to bring the property into code compliance on code case number 2022052. The structure is located in the North Historic District, requiring the Historic Preservation Board to review it. The first photo that you see here is from the master site file. You'll go down. The next photos are photos that the applicant submitted, and keep going. And then this is the work that the applicant had started, and he received the stop order. Staff recommends the board consider if the proposed changes will materially impair the architectural structure or historical value of the home and take away from the character of the district.
Thank you. Board members, do we have questions for Sunshine before she sits down?
I also believe the applicant is here today,
Agent.
Okay.
so he is available for us.
Okay, I do have one question. You mentioned that the applicant went ahead and started the work because of a code issue.
Correct. From my understanding, the applicant received the code violation from code enforcement and started the work to repair the issue, but without a permit.
What was the violation?
I do not have it with me.
It's like wood rot and decay and just,
I'm speaking like what's this? Sorry.
Right, yeah.
it was just
Name and proper-
named Austin,
Thank you.
Austin Beck, 104 First Avenue South. Yeah, he got a code violation for rotten wood, decaying structural, the second story patio was basically falling apart. So then we hired workers and material subcontractor, I believe, to perform the, the tear off and the reinstall, basically like in kind of the deck. So.
Absolutely.
This photo with the angle here and the person's arm, is that that what's going to be affixed to the porch, or are the photo above it?
So, yeah, the reason I held that up is because that was the previous, I guess, reinforcement brace, whatever you want to call it. And he saved those, which is good because, as you can see right now, what it is it's a 2x6 tripled up and screwed into the column. And so I mean, my personal opinion is I think that's probably the most distracting thing in terms of the change from what it used to be, is that going from that to a 2x6, obviously.
So what are the angle supports going to look like when it's finished?
I think, he didn't really have any plans for it. I think it would essentially look like that, just the 2x6.
The top photo.
Right. But with the you can see the only work left to be done is the
Railing.
the railing to go all the way around.
Thank you.
That particular property has sat vacant in the neighborhood for probably the last 8 years, to the best of my recollection. What, and you might not know this, but well, I can't really say why would Mr. Wadman start now. What I could say is what, if you possibly know, prevented Mr. Wadman from bringing it back to look like it has been in the past with a very decorative front.
Perfect. I can't say for sure, but I would probably give an opinion. He's a real estate investor. He owns a lot of property. He's an older gentleman. He has a lot on his hands. He probably has 30 other properties that he's managing, and also commercial complexes, and he managed it himself. So he does have a lot on his plate. And I think it's just kind of something where he didn't take that into consideration in terms of salvaging the historic features of the front. So, but everything is pretty much like in kind. Only changes are the actual balcony. You can see where it's like swirly, the white.
And beautiful.
Right, and that was obviously custom cut at a shop somewhere, and a lot of that wasn't salvageable, it was too rotten. So that and the bracing on the columns and the joists are the only main changes. Everything else is like in kind in terms of the dimensional lumber and everything.
Gotcha. Board members, do we have other questions?
I have a question. How difficult would it be to reproduce the original squall work? What would be involved in that? And having that mounted as opposed to what's there now, which architecturally doesn't really fit the house or Palatka.
Right.
It looks like something that should be in the Midwest. It's not.
Yeah, you mean the
So 45-degree angle.
oh yeah, well those,
Yeah.
I think those were all salvage. So the 45-degree angle piece could be reinstalled. But the balcony piece was not salvageable, and I think in order to recreate that, I mean it looks like a 3/4-inch piece of plywood, and they kind of just put like a blueprint over it and traced it and cut it with a jigsaw or something.
Exactly.
Um,
But you could copy the salvageable pieces and put those back.
yeah, I mean, not an impossible thing to do, I would say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. My husband and I worked on a house in North City in St. Augustine for quite a while, and it was known as the gingerbread house, and it had an incredibly decorative feature like this that went all the way around the ground porch. And most of it had rotted out, and that's exactly what we had to do. Try to find some older plywood, because plywood nowadays is not what it used to be. And then go ahead and trace and jigsaw, and then we were able to recreate and add a total second story porch that mirrored exactly the bottom level. So it is possible. Absolutely. In my estimation, this house is absolutely wonderful, just the way it was. Board members, other questions? If not, we would thank you very much.
Right.
And we would go ahead and at this stage open up to public comment. I didn't forget it this time. Would anyone like to address this particular agenda item? Yes, ma'am. Please, although we know who you are, state your name and address for the record.
You do. Pam Garris, 2220 South Central Avenue, Flagler Beach, Florida. And I do own commercial property in the city of Palatka. My family has since 1977. So there's a lot of investment and heart in the city, and my heart is still here. Some of you know why. I watched this house rot, and then I saw those spindles go up, and I wanted to scream, because they should be sawn balusters put back there, and it does involve work, and it might cost more money, but this town is worth saving, and it has so many treasures that are invaluable, and once they're gone, they're gone. So the attention that you guys give to all these details in your service, I really appreciate it very much. And the devil is in the details, as they say. So I appreciate you pointing that out about the sawn balusters. That's what they're called. Thank you.
Did Ms. Garris fill any else for your sir?
I did it for another.
Just add this item.
Yes, ma'am. All right, well, what we have is a combination of an after the fact permit. We had a staff recommendation that says that we should consider if the proposed changes will materially impair the architectural or historic value of the main historic structure or detract from the character of the district. Comments among ourselves? Mr. Beaton?
I agree with some of the comments that have been made so far. I think just looking at the front of the house, the 45-degree supporting pieces are distracting from the look of the house. It's unfortunate that we don't have it, and I did not have time to research this particular house, but this photograph from the Florida Master Site File was an update because of some work that had been done on the house in 2009. So we don't have the original Florida Master Site File photograph of the house, which would have been 1981, which still probably wouldn't give us everything we need, but I do have a problem with the look of that. I do think the house probably originally was a little more ornate, and I think in trying to keep with that would be a good thing. I do have a question about this 2009 photograph. Does it appear to, and maybe we need to get the contractor or the gentleman back up again, but does it appear that those from the 2009 photograph, does it appear that those supporting pieces are actually cut through, or is that just cut into them but not all the way through? I just wondered about structurally, does that appear to y'all that that's actually an opening in those pieces? Or is it just you think it's an opening versus an indentation? So I'd be interested in any comments that you have. If you can, yeah, there you go. Very nice. Thank you. So do you have any comments about how, if you tried to duplicate what we're seeing in that picture there with those supporting pieces, do you think that would meet the structural requirements needed? You're gonna have to step back. I'm sorry.
Talking about the 45-degree.
Yes, sir.
Well, they were all in a room, so there may be like one missing. They're still in good shape. They weren't rotten, so I think they could be reused. Realistically, there's not that much structural load on those members, but it is going into the columns and on the joists. So I would say, although they do provide some reinforcement, it's not primarily really doing much in terms of load bearing capacity.
And the ones on the second floor appear to be different than the ones on the first floor. Do you have examples of both that were saved?
I don't, but they would be those ones in those pictures for sure. The second floor ones are definitely different.
Okay. Do you think the owner would be amenable to trying to duplicate those pieces for the reconstruction?
I think that it wouldn't be a 100% negative. I think that there would be some consideration for it, and certainly taking into consideration the historical value of the structure, I think that it would be doable.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank
Do you
you.
know what he plans to do with this house?
He actually offered to sell it to me. I've done a lot of roofing contracts for him, and I think it looks like, first time I was over there, it's like a month ago, I went inside of it. It's in the process of being renovated on the inside. Inside needs, the bathrooms are renovated. Everything else in decent shape. The floors are good hardwood floors, needs to be repainted inside, maybe some new HVAC, but I believe he wants to renovate it, and whether or not he's gonna fulfill that or have someone else just buy it and renovate it themselves, I don't know.
He owns another one just around the corner too that's been sitting.
Oh,
since
really?
I moved here.
Oh,
That big house just around, are you familiar with that?
I'm not. Is that one in rough shape too?
The yellow house on Madison.
No, the one right behind the blue house on North Third, the blue house on the corner of Madison. It's the next house. It's a brown house or tan house. He owns that.
I think he has a green one too by the yellow house.
It's got a lot of property.
He's a busy guy.
Absolutely, but we only have so much history here in Palatka.
That's
Other comments from the board?
No, I think everything has been said that I had on my mind, so I just want to second it in terms of really including whatever we come up with, if you guys would consider it to require the duplication, whether it's the use of ones we were able to salvage or those that we do not have, creating that so that it gets that same look, whereas the first and second would be my recommendation.
Yeah, definitely, I don't think those symbols are what the house, but in that photo, that's what it needs to be. That gives the house historical character.
Would the board agree that perhaps the thing to do with this particular application is to ask the applicant to work with staff and come back to us with some other alternatives?
Well, I'd be okay, including our approval, adding the recommendation or requirement to duplicate. What is there in terms of the angle pieces there, and making that a requirement in terms of this being approved with that condition.
I am not.
Is that appropriate in terms of staff? Would that be?
Yes, sir. We would go out and do a subsequent inspection when the permitting is done. assuming you've applied for a building permit?
I think they're waiting on your approval essentially.
Very good.
Madam Chair.
Mr. David.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So just to kind of clarify, the two issues that I'm hearing from everyone are the 45-degree and the railing itself on the second floor. So what other work, is there any, from looking at the work that's been done, and I drove by the house before I came here, but is there anything else that would have to be removed from the work that you've done so far? If those changes were made, is there anything that we haven't talked about that, I mean, I know you obviously have done quite a bit of work to the front, but other than the 45-degree braces and the railing, that section of railing that's up, is there anything else that would have to be removed to meet what the board is apparently leaning towards?
No, I think as soon as you unscrew the bolts on those 45 right now, they'll come off, and then the spiral railing. I said everything else was pretty much like in kind in terms of dimensional lumber. Even the columns, you can see at the bottom, they're not just straight 6x6s. They've got that cut at the bottom that as they should.
When you say everything else like in kind, what are you referring to? Are you referring to?
I got
The
a drawing, basically the structural, so the columns is 6x6, the beams are 6x8s. The actual deck boards are pressure treated 2x6, and second story column is a 6x6. So it's pretty much, that was the dimensional lumber that it was originally constructed out of. The joist was in 2x8. Yeah, 2x8. It's all pressure treated lumber.
Chair, could I drill down one more time? I promise I'll stop at this. So, could I ask you, in looking at this photograph from 2009, sir, and you're seeing what this rail looked like in 2009, and like I say, I just personally don't know how old that is that we're seeing up there. I don't know if that's something that was done in the 20th century or if it's older than that. It's certainly not a common pattern that you see with the houses in Palatka. So I don't know sitting here, but what's your opinion about what would be required to duplicate something like that?
So I would assume that, you'd go to Home Depot, find like a 3/4 inch sanded plywood and trace out take one of the existing pieces, trace it out, and you'd have to cut it with the jigsaw. Take a Sharpie and draw it out first. Or, I guess something that we'll have to take into consideration is there may be some sort of fabrication shop, woodwork shop somewhere, and they may have some additional options that are similar, or they could have the same one. And that also goes for the 45-degree brackets. Maybe in the event that there is some sort of local carpenter somewhere that makes stuff like this, then we could have some submittals that we could present to you all as well. And that way everything would be brand new.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Sheffield, for your comments in the form of a motion.
Madam Chair, one clarity, members, from my view personally, I know really getting that duplication of the railings with that intricate would be a bit more onerous in my opinion, in terms of asking for the owner to do that. But I was speaking to, so I just wanted to be clear, was adding the requirement for the braces, if you will, to make sure they are an exact duplicate of what was existing there. And then as long as the railings at they have the one up on the one side. Now, as long as the detail there was good for the period similar to what's in Palatka, I'd be okay with that. That's what I was going to end up motioning. But that's no discussion. Okay.
I'm just against this one.
Oh, it's the spindle of all.
Yeah.
All right, well, was your motion a motion? Would be the
Well, I can make a motion. I can definitely make a motion. I just want to make my motion.
If we are still in discussion purposes and someone else wants to make a motion,
Well, I like to hear the view of any of the members, or is there a separate recommendation? To it, it looks like.
Architecturally, the spindles don't bother me because they would be consistent with the period of the house. And I think you're correct in saying that attempting to duplicate the original, I think it would be difficult. I think it would be costly.
Yeah, we got.
And I
this stuff.
think we have to pay attention. But if we can put the gingerbread back on where it was, even with the spindles, I think that that's a solution that would help the house and have it appear to be fitting in with the neighborhood and historically correct. These spindles, I'm looking at these spindles. I know houses with spindles like this from the 1800s. So this is not inconsistent with the period of time.
The house right next door has the same spindles.
I was gonna say that I did recognize that when I was out there.
Does that make it right? They're on too.
That could very, very well be. But I'll go ahead and make a motion. Anyway, I move that we approve the certificate of appropriateness for the changes required here with condition that the support 45 degree supporting would be duplicated with exactly as they are with the second and first floors to have them go back to what the ratings were. The two rooms.
They're really not the inwards.
I know they're not. They're decorative. Yeah. But they look like this.
And I'll second that motion. And just for clarification, I understand your motion is directed at the decorative pieces to the side and does not include the railing.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I will second that motion as read.
we have a motion and a second. Do we have more discussion? May I ask for, instead of a yay or a nay, a independent vote?
Sure, we can do a roll call vote.
Thank you.
Mr. Sheffield,
Yay.
Mr. Beaton,
Yes.
Mr. Hollister,
I don't know. Yeah, I'm the one that brought the violations to the attention of the city, so I don't know if I should even vote yea or nay.
That would possibly come up in the.
I believe
Spark
Mr.
communication.
I believe Mr. Holmes is nodding his head, but you can vote.
In my opinion, that would not be a conflict.
Okay. Yes, I'm okay with the decorative support going back up and the railing that is started.
You're in support of the decorative railing. Can you clarify? Is that a nay
No,
vote?
I'm for the decorative 45 pieces and the railing that they started to put up already, the spindles.
Okay, so I take that as a yay.
Yeah,
Mr. Jefferson,
Yay.
Ms. Pierce,
I'm opposed to the spindles. But I'm in favor of the decorative pieces, so, no.
thank you. Ms. Rosa,
Yes.
thank you. Chair Van Rensburg.
Yeah.
I point out an observation to you. The people that did that, took the fans off and just kind of cut the wire and then put it back into the wall or something.
Put the ceiling,
You may want to check on that.
okay, the ceiling fans out there.
Yeah, plus they took the wiring off and just let it dangle and pull it out of Richard.
Right.
And you want to cut that off with a pole across the way if you're doing any work.
Oh, I'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, for the record, motion passed 5-2.
Thank you, and thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I think you'll still have a forum, but I need to take a quick break.
Okay, moving on to agenda item C. This is HPV case 2312, request for a certificate of appropriateness to rehabilitate property to include painting, replacement of roof, window, siding, and door replacement, porch modification, new porch deck, and new wood stairs. Whew, the owner is I can't quite say that. Lamine B. There you go. 117 LLC, and the address is 117 Hotel Street, Palatka, Florida. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Prior to that, no, sorry. If I make any mistakes, you can just blame it on the city manager. Per the master site plan, this transitional frame vernacular residence was built between 1915 and 1924. Unlike other transitional homes of the period, the main structure is covered by a steeply pitched gable roof, reference to the Victorian period. And the home also, over the property and the home overlooks St. John's River. The owner of the property desires to repair various components of the house, starting with repairing all the windows and the doors, replace the siding, replace the current roof with a metal roof, painting the home. They also plan to remove a wall that encloses the double-story porch that you see to the left. They're going to add a wood deck to the back of the structure and a wood stairs along the south side of the structure. The structure is located in the South Historic District, requiring your review. The application has provided staff with product style of material and pictures. So here you're going to see, is there one before it's coming? I'm sorry. Okay, so that's the figure 3 is the current home, how it looks. And we're going to go down. Figure 4 are the doors that they plan to use, the material, both material. Figure 5 is the window. And this is paint color and the siding, the color of the siding. And this is the proposed metal roof. Staff recommends the board review the proposed changes and determine if the changes will materially impair the architectural or historical value of the home, or take away from the character of the district. The applicant is on Zoom for questions and a presentation.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Norma Dela Cruz, and this is my business partner, Michael Stosky. And we're here to answer any questions you would have regarding this restoration.
Thank you very much for joining us today. The first thing I would say is replacing wooden doors with aluminum doors, replacing wooden windows with aluminum windows, and replacing wooden siding with party boards does not, in my book, make restoration. But we have questions for the applicant's board.
It seems that the sleeping porch, the enclosed sleeping porch will be taken away and it will just be screened porch.
Correct. So basically we would remove the walls because from what I saw in the permitting portion, those walls were never permitted to be built on that porch because it was an exposed porch at one time. So we were going to eliminate those walls and re-expose it to what it normally was before that time.
What kind of siding's on the house right now?
It's currently a wood siding. And the reason why we were wanting to redo the siding is because throughout time, there was a lot of patchwork that was done throughout it. Some of the siding is rotting as well. So that's why we were wanting to do something that would last a lot longer and suggesting the hardy plank.
The rotten wood currently, the siding, that could be replaced though, with wood.
You
Right.
want, what was that? Sorry?
I said you can replace the rotten portions of that siding with wood again, correct?
It's going to be a lot of patchwork. So you're going to see all those patches throughout. So that's why we were trying to do it all seamless. So then you wouldn't see all those patches throughout.
One of the slippery slopes that we have as a historical board is spot approval.
Okay.
When we go by the workbook that we are given, we are dealing with historic structures, and you just don't put new stuff where old stuff was. Because when you do that, you open up a window for everyone else to say, well, why couldn't we do it? And then before you know it, you don't have a lot of history left. So I apologize if I came on a little bit strong, but wood can be replaced. It can be epoxied. There are a number of things that can happen to wood as opposed to just replacing wood with aluminum or siding with hardy wood. So that's just to give you a little bit of an understanding of what we deal with here and potentially why, and I don't speak for staff, but potentially why staff asked us to take a long, hard look at this item. Other comments from the board or questions? Yes, sir.
This photo of the garage, why is that there?
The garage back in the back portion?
We have a photo of the garage. Is that going to be taken down or?
No, nope.
Or
No, basically we would add the roof, we would replace the roof on that, and then we were going to redo the siding on that as well.
is the siding on the garage the same as the house?
Correct. Actually, it's if you see the back part of the house, it's a different siding than the front. It's the same as that back portion.
Would that be a source of siding for the house?
So the back portion of the house has the same siding as the porch, as the garage.
Is that wood siding?
Yes, it is wood.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have further questions for the applicants? If not, I'm going to go ahead and open to public comment.
You have my card, if you stand this number to it, Allegra Kitchens, 1027 South 12th Street, Palatka, Florida. One of the reasons I'm glad I'm not in the historic district is that you all do have to adhere to the certain qualifications and regulations. One of them is, my understanding, that you do have to replace historic properties with historic type lumber. In other words, you don't put vinyl on a historic house, you don't put aluminum on it. You have to replace it with wood. And yes, wood can be patched very effectively, and it's part of the historic look. So I would say that you really don't have, you do have some choice, but again, you are opening it up because once you take a historic house and you start putting pieces of aluminum on it or vinyl or a hardy board or whatever it is, modern type lumber,
or pieces for the construction, and you're destroying the historic aspect of the house. And that in turn could destroy the historic aspect of the neighborhood. The only other question I have is, I haven't seen a lot of historic houses that are painted dark gray, and it looks like this one really painted dark gray all over with a dark gray roof.
No, that's not correct. So only the porch area would be painted the dark gray, and then the foundation masonry, which is green in these photos that you see, that would be painted the dark gray. Everything else would be white.
Okay.
Yep.
But again, I would say one of the drawbacks and one of the positive things both of living in the historic district is you do have to comply with historic type construction. So that's my comment. Thank you. Kira?
I don't mean to be overly critical, but I have personal experience with the window issue. When I came back to Palatka to live in 2009, we had very severe problems with our windows at 603 Emmett Street, which is now Grand Gables, which my parents spent a fortune replacing. They didn't worry about that it would cost more to make stone balusters. They put back what was there because there is architectural and historic merit in those proponents. So I'm very disappointed about spindles. The window issue, if you know that structure 603 Emmett has huge windows. You couldn't afford to have new windows made if you were a gazillionaire. I mean, they're huge. And the mayor, Robbie Correa, who was the president of the South Historic at the time, she came and lent her expertise and quoted the Secretary of the Interior that has all of these guidelines, and you really need to read those things. That you don't replace wooden windows, wooden doors with new modern components because you have taken away, you've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. And you have cheapened your investment, you have cheapened the neighborhood, and you have lost the value of your home. Okay? And when you go to sell it, if you have people who know those details, they're going to walk past your house and not be interested. And I hate to be that blunt, but that's the truth. We were fortunate to find a man. I knew he was a great carpenter. He was from Cape Cod and he had come to live in Pomona Park. And I think God sent him. He was a fine finished carpenter. He fixed mullions. He made those windows sing again to the tune. And this was in 2010. It sounds like a lot of money, but it was cheap compared to how many windows and how big they are in the house. It was $17,000 and something for him to do that. It took months. My husband and he became buddies. So these things are not easy. They're not cheap, but you can't forego the quality of doing it right because it may be another 100 years before anybody does it. And your town is going to look like nobody cared if you don't do these things.
Thank you, Ms.
And we care. Thank you.
Board. Oh, I'm sorry. It's okay. No, I only saw the. I guarantee it's
Play and handwrite.
And I will fill out my card. Thank you. Just your name and address, Cheryl. Okay.
Cheryl Roche, 312 Dodge Street. I live in the South Historic District, so firstly, I would like to welcome new people into the neighborhood. It is very important to me to have people buying these homes. I most certainly respect all aspects of preserving an old home. I own one. I think that there can be scare tactics pertaining to the reality of maintaining a home like you have purchased. I admire it. I walk by it every day with my dog. And I have wood windows, I have wood siding, and my interpretation and my history in trying to keep my house together is just maintenance, and you do kind of have to patchwork sometimes. So there's nothing wrong with replacing wood siding with wood siding. There's nothing wrong with preserving your wood windows. And I do agree with preserving the character, but I am very concerned about the fine balance that this town needs to maintain in welcoming people who want to move and restore these homes. So yes, of course, please don't put vinyl windows in and don't put party siding up, but do realize that it is an attainable situation, and you've already improved the home, and it's a wonderful, wonderful home. And I hope that you can work out the situation and maintain the integrity of the property and still have it financially feasible for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. May I close the public comment section? It strikes me, board, and I'd like your opinion on this, that there are portions of this application that I don't believe we have issue with. For example, to replace the current roof with a metal roof. Is everyone fine on that? Would we say that we all don't take objection to adding a wood deck to the back of the structure? Or, for example, adding wood stairs along the south side of the structure? So I do see some compromise. I really do. Having said that, are we in somewhat of agreement with aluminum doors and windows not being something that we are excited about? Yes, Mr. Beaton.
I apologize for not being here at the beginning of the discussion. Was there a discussion about the wood deck?
No, however, what I'm seeing in the application is that the staff is definitely recommending parts of this application, but is urging caution in other parts.
Okay,
Is that correct as well?
I just had a quick question about the wood deck. Is it visible from Hotel Street or River Street? Will it be visible from Hotel Street or River Street?
Yes, it will. Yes. Yes, it will. And I don't have anything to file that indicates what that deck would look like when it's finished.
I would definitely like to make that part of the exemption of what we approved today until we get a better definitive look at that, because I think a wooden deck might be distracting from the original historic structure if it's kind of sticks out there from an appearance, especially on River Street, but also, of course, a lot of people make that detour down Hotel Street, also just admiring the beautiful houses such as the applicant's house, which, by the way, I think is an outstanding house in the neighborhood. It certainly adds to the attractiveness of Hotel Street.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Mr. Beaton. Can we, or should we take this application in parts and first consider a metal roof as a way of moving forward? Okay, if we can begin with the metal roof, might there be
Permission to replace the existing roof? No.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second to replace the existing roof with a metal roof. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Excuse me for that big with regard to adding a wood deck to these, let's go with the back side of the structure. The staff feel like they have enough information.
Sorry, can we show you images of what that will look like? Because we submitted that, it just didn't get into this report for some reason. So we have images of what it will look like after the renovation.
You have that, what you know, sometimes, not mine.
May I present or?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. Just doing it.
Oh,
Thank you very much for pointing that out.
That's their presentation.
All right, so we are looking at, unfortunately, not a numbered page, but 1 to page 3, the scope of work. I believe front side elevation or left side elevation.
The front of that, right?
So,
For the two decks. Right plan has.
So the porch that's closed in is actually on the left side of
correct.
the river.
Yes, it's facing, River Street, yes.
And you're going to screen that in?
So basically, we were gonna take down the walls to expose how the porch was before the walls went up, and then we were just screening it in just so there would be comfort for the like whoever stays there.
Okay, so what maybe we were dealing with many years ago was the bottom of that was an open porch, possibly, and the top of it might have been enclosed as a sleeping porch, possibly. So the concept is to open them both up. Not
Yes.
footprint of the home, but simply to make it all into a screen porch area. Is that correct?
Correct.
How do we feel about that, board?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally different than what I thought. I mean, I wouldn't consider that a deck. I would say they're opening up an existing, upper and lower of the house, you know, I mean, that's existing structure, isn't it? That you're just, opening up and having railing and screen, is that what they're doing?
That is
Yeah.
my,
So before it was a porch, and we have photos of that. If you want to see photos, we could show our screen where you can see the interior windows within that porch. So that whole side, there's windows that are inside that porch along the main house structure.
Doors and windows.
Yep. So, I mean, from my thought, why would they put a window on the interior of the house that would open up to another interior portion of the house?
Mr. Sheffield?
So I'm gonna make sure I understand this. If we're uncovering really what, and getting back to the original on this side of the house here,
Yep.
Is there anything required in terms of you're adding something? Because I don't know, of course, what's inside there, but you're looking at this because in the illustration on the left side elevation here, we see 3 columns going up, or are all 3 of those?
That's where we think the existing.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, that's where we think the existing structure is. So we were gonna keep those. Until we open it up, we don't really know for sure, but that's where we were thinking based off of how the windows are currently lined up in the area.
And so your plan would be to get back to whatever the original was, and then you're going to add screening to it.
Yes, and then add a railing to it per code.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
So based on that, board members, how do we feel about the concept of the sleeping porch, et cetera, being turned back into an open screen porch, and for that matter, stairs along the south side of the structure?
Madam Chair, I think that's a good idea to go ahead and make that into a double porch back to what it was. However, screening it is modernizing it. And I think that will take away from it.
Screen is something that could be put in and taken out very simply by the next.
It can. If they just amend the screen, I'm good with making it into a double porch.
Having a similar structure on the back of my house, which used to be enclosed with those horrible jalousie windows with sleeping porch above, I will tell you that when we went back, we didn't screen it, and man, bugs are awful.
It's for
Yeah, it was bad. I wish we had screened it. Screen to me is something that comes in, it can be taken out. It's not a deal breaker in my book. But where are we at, ladies and gentlemen, with the concept of
This is, we will see this on River Street, this port, and so I'm not a fan of the screening, modernizing this piece either. But I like that they're keeping the same consistency with the home at the bottom there and really uncovering what was historically there. And so I hope you don't, please take all of this discussion and in the right way. We're excited that you're doing this, but we really are, like we've heard others say, we've got these guidelines in front of us that are really asking us with every decision whether we're taking away from a historical value of the community. So, I too have an issue with the screen, but other than that, I'm good with the
All right, if anyone would like to take the pieces parts of this application that we find to be good ideas for the most part and make them into a form of a motion, I think that would be awesome.
Madam Chair. Maybe it's just me. I'm still a little confused about what I'm seeing here. Can you, Sonny, can you roll that up where it's just showing the left side elevation? Okay, so that's the side, that's what it would conceptually look like if you were driving down River Street. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and what is the railing upstairs and downstairs? What is that
It would be a wood railing upstairs and downstairs, and as you can tell, it's taller than the front stairs because the front porch, because we want to grandfather that front porch in and not mess with the railing, even knowing it doesn't meet code. Hopefully we can do that. But on this other portion, since it's all going to be newer wood, we would have to do that per code.
Is the downstairs porch, I'm trying to compare that to the photographs of the existing structure. Is the downstairs porch going to be narrower than the upstairs?
Nope, they're both the same size.
Okay.
Yep.
Maybe I'm getting confused with photographs here. Is the second picture in this package the rear of the house? I guess it is. Yeah, it's the rear, not the. Is that right? The one that's got the vehicle in the left-hand corner of the picture? There's one aren't numbered, but. Is that the rear of the house?
That's
This is the left side?
that's going to face River, that does face.
Okay. So you're changing the size of the window at the rear of the house on the River Street side?
Yes, so we were trying, because since that whole back portion was an addition, it was probably about 1952. The addition, and that's when they encased the porch, because you can tell on the photos that all that is a different siding than the main house. So we were gonna take it back to the original look of the original house and keep that same window style down there instead of keeping the 1950 version window in there.
Understand. So the railing to the front porch is going to be identical to what you're adding to the River Street side.
We would try our best to make it match. Obviously it's going to be a lot taller because of the code issues nowadays compared to back in 1915.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Attacking this from a different angle. Let's look at the concept of replacing the siding with hardy board, both on the main structure and on the garage. Do we feel comfortable with that as a board? I'm gonna make a mark by that. Replacing the doors and windows with aluminum doors and windows. Do we feel comfortable about that as a board? Okay. If we don't feel comfortable about that, would someone be interested in pulling those two items, replacing doors and windows with aluminum and replacing siding with hardy board, and make it into a motion? How to eat an elephant. One bite at a time, guys.
Madam Chair, the only two items you're removing from this, or you're requesting to remove from the motion are first two items, the windows and the siding.
And
Windows, siding, and doors.
Oh,
And-
windows, sidings and doors, okay.
My feeling is if we all do not feel like this is something that we would like to approve, let's separate it, make a motion to not approve, and then try to move on with other matters under the application.
Okay, I don't have trouble with making this motion, but do we want some clarification about the wood deck, about the screening?
I feel, Mr. Deaton, that is important, but what I'm trying to do is just take the things off of the board that we agree we do not want, so that we can delve into other matters without getting hopelessly mired in the details. Does that make sense?
Well, I was gonna try to do all of these in one motion.
If you would like to do that,
Right.
I'm gonna stand by and watch.
Okay. All right, Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we approve the applicant's request for the following items that are itemized on page 2 of our report, which are replace the current roof with a metal roof, paint the structure, remove the wall that enclosed the double-story porch, add a wooden deck to the back of the structure, and wood stairs along the south side of the structure.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Do we have discussion? If not, let's go ahead and call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Beaton,
Yes.
Mr. Hollister,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Ms. Pierce,
Yes.
Ms. Rosa,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sheffield,
yes,
Chairman Rinsberg.
Yes,
Motion passed unanimously.
thank you. Moving on to replacing windows, replacing siding, replacing doors. How do we feel about that?
Can I interrupt really quick? I'm sorry. When we open up this porch, there are some openings that they at some point remove the windows and doors in that area, and they're just wide open spaces. So for us to, yeah, how would you want us to fill in those gaps?
consistently with the windows in other places of the home. So that have not been subject to that, so that it follows that same historical size pattern, in all.
Okay. So it would just have to be a wood door or a wood window to mimic what we currently have in the house, correct?
Correct.
Does he understand? We're only talking exterior.
Yes, we're only talking, oh, yes. Mr. Bean wanted to make sure you understood that.
So
Once you take that porch down, it's going to be exterior.
Yes, those will then be exterior, and yes, those would need to be consistent with the others. But we're looking to wood as opposed to vinyl and all of these circumstances.
Thank you. Can we move on to replacing of windows with aluminum, replacing the doors with aluminum, and replacing siding with hardy boards?
Didn't Larry's motion cover that, or?
No, we split things up. Yep, now we're on windows and doors. Would someone like to entertain a motion?
I'm not sure what kind of motion you're looking for. I thought my motion was basically, well, you're making a recommendation to him that he can do this work, but it can't be the materials that he's requested. Is that what you're looking for?
Okay, I would look for staff to guide me.
Madam Chair, I would move that the applicants be allowed to do more research and come back to the board given our, feedback and.
I'm sorry. Sidewalk.
Okay.
Sorry.
Given the direction we've given them with respect to wood versus, aluminum, it would be great if they could come back with what that plan was, the size and style, window materials, and all of that for the windows and doors and siding.
So for the windows, are you talking about for if we do like wood windows? Or are you talking about if we did the aluminum?
Wood, we'd like to see what you'd be looking at, in terms of the wood windows, what that material would look like and the design of those windows.
Yeah, so it would mimic exactly what we have there. So it'd be a single hung with a grid right down the center. So exactly what you have on the house right at the moment.
And so you're saying what this aluminum picture is.
That's basically to give you an idea of what it'll look like, but they will be single hungs just like what we have on site right now, and they'll have the grid right down the center.
Yes.
Yep. So everything is going to look from the street, it will look exactly like how it does right now. It's just made out of aluminum and it's low E glazing and it's insulated, so it'll be more energy efficient for the house.
Okay. And as far as the doors.
The doors, we were trying to keep the same style as the windows. So as you can see up on figure 4, the upper left-hand corner, that would be the typical style of the door. And then for the sliding glass door in the back, the one to the right, the image to the right, it would look like that. So basically we're trying to keep the same exact look of what we currently have out there.
So are you going to take a sliding glass door out and replace it with another sliding glass door?
Correct. Because the current sliding glass door is a aluminum one.
Later. A sliding glass door.
I think if you do some looking, what you will find is that there are new windows that are available where the interior part, the functioning part of the window may be metal or fiberglass or something else. But what shows on the inside and the outside, the framework is actually wood. It's like a metal interior, so it operates. It will use double glazing, so that will cover your concerns about.
Yeah, typically that's a fiberglass window. And then they do the different sides and the different colors, like the wood on the outside and then the paint on the inside. So would you allow us to do fiberglass or vinyl windows?
I would ask at this point that perhaps staff redirects us as to what our job is as far as allowing things to be put into historic homes that shouldn't be added to historic homes. I mean, perhaps staff could just review with us the Secretary of the Interior standards and what they have to say about a request exactly of this nature, because that is our job as a board to follow those guidelines. It's not to make a decision over here that's one thing and then make a decision over there that's something else. It is strictly to follow guidelines given to us. Could staff perhaps help us out?
Madam Chair, you have indicated exactly what I would be saying, that we are tasked with utilizing the Secretary of Interior standards for restoration and rehabilitation. And they specifically state, like for like, if you've got wood framed windows, they need to be wood framed windows going back in.
Sweet, okay.
Replace or new.
Thank you. What I'm understanding at this point is, as a historical board, none of us are comfortable with the idea of replacing wooden windows with aluminum and replacing wooden doors with aluminum doors and replacing wooden siding with hardy board. And rather than just saying that we're going to not allow that portion of this application to move forward. It seems to me that Mr. Sheffield gave a wonderful, raised hand to the new homeowner saying, can you work with staff and come back with us and let's look at some other alternatives, because we're just not happy with that. We just don't see how we can improve it because it flies a big flag on our jobs. You didn't quite make that into a motion, Mr. Sheffield. Would you care to?
Yeah. I move that we request the staff to work with the applicant to come back with wood doors and windows alternatives to present to the board.
Mr., may I ask if you intend to include the siding?
Yes, I'm sorry, the siding also.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, may I ask, is his motion include a time and date certain or no time and date certain to just come back at their convenience?
They can come back from their
The next meeting.
but for the next meeting.
Oh, maybe before then, we will do our best to research on this and find the proper solution quickly.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you very much. Any more discussion on that, board members? If not, all in favor? Please say aye. And opposed? Thank you very much, and we hope that you appreciate that we were able to say absolutely on some things and let's get a little more information on how we can move together on others.
No, that helps us out. I do have one quick question for you, if that's okay.
All yours.
Because we're trying to get a building permit as quickly as possible, can we go ahead and get the building permit? And then we can go ahead and start the renovation to the project, and then we can come back at the next meeting with the windows and doors if we chose to go ahead with the windows and doors and siding.
I'm understanding that many things can be accomplished on a staff level that you don't need to come to us. When you need to come to us, it's because you're making a big change that needs to be approved via the certificate of appropriateness. If the certificate of appropriateness is not needed, there's no reason to come back to us. I'm certain that there are a lot of projects that go on in the historic districts that are dealt with on a staff level, and we never even hear about them. It's really just when you want to change something pretty substantial about the envelope of the home that it falls under our purview. So I would recommend that you talk to staff. They're wonderful and they want to help. And we go from there.
Sounds good. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for your time and consideration. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Question, we have been here for an hour and a half. Would it be okay to take a 5-minute break just to, okay, wonderful. Can we just, we don't need to adjourn, we can just take a 5-minute break, is that correct? Okay, let's give it 5 and come on back.
I want to know those.
This is HPV case 23-13. It is a request for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish two accessory structures. The owner is Don Rawl. The address is 210 South 3rd Street, Palatka, Florida. Let's begin with staff comments, please. Ms. Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the subject property at 210 South 3rd Street, there are two accessory buildings that are located there. On December 18, 2014, at the Historic Preservation Board meeting, Mr. Thad Crow, one of the previous planning directors, stated that the small metal accessory building was constructed around 1930. It has original features such as some wood siding in the rear, a metal roof and walls, and metal beams, but it is an undistinguishable building with no real utility at this time. The two accessory buildings are not listed in the master site plan. The owner of the property desires to demolish the buildings that are located on the property. The structures courts in the South Historic District, and the demolition request must go before the board. Below in the staff report are photographs of the two buildings, the two accessory buildings. I'll give you a moment to look at those. There's also a current photograph beneath that of the two buildings, as neither accessory building is listed in the Florida Master Site File and neither building is listed as a contributing structure. Staff recommends approval of a certificate of appropriateness to demolish the accessory buildings located there.
Thank you. Do we have questions of Ms. Walsh or? No. The owners here, if you wouldn't mind going with your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. My name is Dawn Rawls at 2510 Krill Avenue. A little bit of history. I don't want to bore you with it, so at any point, just, you know. My mom owns several properties in the city, and since 2019, I have been caring for her full time. I assessed all of the properties and I have been liquidating them according to what I felt was a need to. I prioritized her list, and I sold them because of lack of maintenance or other obligations. So with this property, I never really paid too much attention to it. And it was brought to my attention that homeless was staying in there, and I found it very unsafe for visitors of the boat ramp to have that type of problem. So with the recent North Side fire in the death of 3 of the homeless people, I decided that that would be the best use of this property would be to take that thing and clean up the property a little bit. I don't know the historic value of this. I'm way too busy to look into that. So I apologize, because you guys all seem like you know everything about every property.
I wish.
Madam Chair, I do have something that I wanted to bring to your attention. It's on your desk in front of you. It's section 54-79. There's two pieces of paper that were stapled together and put at your places. And on the second sheet, there's criteria for decisions on certificates of appropriateness. It's section 54-79B4. I've highlighted that in yellow. You might be able to see that. In the case of the proposed demolition of an existing structure, the removal of such structure will not be detrimental to the historic and architectural character of the district, or that balancing the interests of the city in preserving the integrity of the district and the interests of the owner of the property. Approval of the plans for demolition is required by considerations of reasonable justice and equity. In the latter event, the board shall issue an order postponing demolition for a period of not to exceed 3 months. If the board concludes that the demolition should be postponed, it shall, before issuing any final order with respect to such postponement, afford the applicant an opportunity to appear before the board to offer any evidence he may desire to present concerning the proposed order. Within the period of postponement, The board shall consult with the Putnam County Historical Society Board of Directors and others to ascertain what the city or other agency or organization may do to preserve such structure and shall make recommendations to that effect to the city commission or otherwise cause the structure to be preserved. This article shall not apply to any permit for demolition which has been applied for prior to the effective date of the ordinance. And I wanted to bring that to your attention because it will become, it's relevant in this request and it's also relevant in the subsequent request about to come before. But that's just a refresher on the code and what should be included in a motion or conditions that you may implement.
Thank you very much. For our newer board members, could you perhaps capsulate that entire thing into kind of one or two short sentences?
Are you happy with the legalese part? Basically, if you are going to approve or not approve or deny a demolition, you have to give specific reasons. And you have to provide for a period of examination and information or fact finding with the Historical Society Board of Directors and others. And you also should consider what could or should be done to preserve a structure. Okay.
Thank you. Board members, do we have questions of Ms. Rawls regarding the application?
I think she's already answered it. You've already answered it. One of the things that was striking me with this is I don't know if Mr. Beaton will be able to add anything to historical importance of the sites here, because I hate to make a decision and without knowing that. And so I don't know, I don't have that. And so I was glad to hear you read that there, because I think it's important to know before we take any action.
My personal question is, it looks to me like the garage itself might have been built in the 1930s. I mean, that rings true to me just looking at the architecture. And to me, that is very historic. The little accessory building, which I guess might have been a one-bedroom apartment at some point, maybe not so much. But
There's no plumbing in it.
once again, I sit on the historical board because I care about history.
Yeah.
If I didn't care so much about history, I suppose I would find that there was a new construction board to sit on. So we could rather discuss that, but the garage to me looks like something kind of wonderful. The little house, not so much so. Mr. Beaton, do you have any history regarding this property?
Again, I want to apologize that I've been distracted by other inquiries by the city of Palatka and others this week. So I did not have a chance to research this, but I have researched these buildings in the past for people. My recollection is, well, I know originally before these buildings were there, there was the railroad owned this because the railroad went down the Market Street and they had some of their maintenance buildings on this site. Later, the portion where the garage is was a stable and they rented carriages and horses. In the period that I think these buildings went up, the garage housed hearses for Davis Funeral Home, which later became Johnson Davis Funeral Home, which later became Overturf Funeral Home. The little building towards the center of the lot housed caskets, and there were racks still there in the 1960s, 70s period.
They're still there.
Where they had the caskets. Yeah. So it also has been used for a couple of that standalone buildings, been used for a couple of small businesses, maybe in the 1980s or 90s. Some of y'all might recall that. And then it was used as a residence for a short period of time. But I think the longest user of those two buildings was probably the funeral. And, I don't know more than that right now about it. But I would agree with you that I think the buildings probably date to the 1920s and 30 period.
Well, Mr. Beaton, that is more than we knew before.
The reason you're before us, you want to demolish these. You mentioned, I thought in your comments, because the homeless individuals are getting there, you're trying, it's a safety or other hazard, is that what
Yes,
you're?
it is. I think it is. It's right across from the boat ramp and not too far away is a playground. So, we have a homeless issue that we need to take care of and, you know, having vacant buildings around that I can't really, I don't really know what to say, but I wouldn't want the homeless in there. And I don't want to be the one, you know, locking the doors and bolting them and screwing them shut just to have them open again. So it's, in my opinion, it's a safety issue. And there are several buildings around town, down St. John's Avenue. My mom owned several of the buildings downtown and I sold them. And at one point, I believe it was the old Diana shop, there was a homeless lady in there. At the same time I was showing and she pulled out of her underneath her sleeping thing that stick with a point on it and started screaming to the top of her lungs. So it's a whole different culture. And I understand, you know, that we're not a part of that culture. And you don't just walk up and say, excuse me, can you move along? I'm showing the building to sell. They don't. It's you were disrespectful and they will come after you. So I don't want to own a piece of property that's going to cause physical damage to somebody else just walking their child to a park. I think that the city of Palatka needs to, you know, and the boards that we have need to be more responsible. And, you know, there is a historic side to this property that is great and well, but it's also not feasible for me to go in and completely redo this whole entire structure and make it something that it's not, you know, and
I understand completely.
I don't want to put a garage in the middle of downtown. You know, I think that's just a horrible use of property. You know, I think something else can be put there. And, you know.
Well, and let me say that I agree with you on some levels. I will also tell you that, you know, a good sound padlock will not keep everyone out, but it will keep most people out, especially if the property next door doesn't have a padlock on it. So I feel that there are some things that you can do to attempt to prevent people setting up shop in these properties. Having said that, I apologize, Mr. Jefferson, you had a comment.
I could be wrong, but the diamonds on the garage, I think are similar to the diamonds on the building at Fourth and Oak. And also, I think it possibly could have been part of the Ford apartments. Which has little significance, but the diamonds, I've walked by there and I've seen on the other properties there too.
I think that building went on my head before because I knew it was, I knew it
I'll tell you what, ladies, we're gonna get to the public comment section of things. Or do we have any other questions for the property owner at this time? If not, we thank you so much, Ms. Ross. And I believe at this point, we should go ahead and open up to public comment. Anyone would like to speak to this man?
I live in Kitchens, 1027 South Grove Street, in Blackford, Florida. I like to add a little bit to what Mr. Deaton said about the history of the property. The smaller building in the 40s, during World War II, it was used by the Red Cross and or the Army Medical Division to screen folks for various illnesses. So it is sort of historical from that standpoint only. I don't necessarily have any particular problem with these buildings being torn down. I do have a problem with tearing down a vacant building because the homeless will get in them, because if we start doing that, then what, a third of Palatka will be torn down. And yes, you're right, a padlock will deter a lot of people, as well as nail shut windows. The homeless don't have a lot of tools to break into places like that. And I think that, and I understand the concern that Ms. Rawls has. I would suggest that if you all at least turn down the demolition, which according to what, Ms. Walsh told you, you have to have some sort of good reason to, but that Ms. Rawls, perhaps that it's a danger to her, and the property was probably bought for investment, go ahead and put it on the market to be sold. The city of Palatka is always looking for more parking space, and they at one time talked about renting the corner vacant lot. I don't remember if they did or not, so there's options other than tearing the building down at this time. And yes, Ms. Ford did own it at one time, and if somebody did live there, he was somebody was like her handyman, and he did live in that little house for a while. And then later, Mr. Deaton is right, I remember the Davis funeral home being there, but I think Masters, a little bit later, Masters was in the small building and used that as one of their offices, and then they had caskets and stuff. And of course, the question is, what might be going to be put on that property if you all have it torn down, which you all probably don't need to think about, but it would be a historical question, because anything that would be built on there to replace it, as well as the property that you're going to look at next. It's a whole slate of property facing the river. This very expensive property, and there may be some future development plan that would be or might not coincide with the historic district development plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else? Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to? Yes, sir. If you raise your name and address for the record, please. And by the way, I would like to keep this agenda item separate from item E. Let's take one thing at a time, if we could, please. And thank you.
Absolutely. My name is Ralph Lemus. My permanent address is 889 Lake Mary Drive, Altamont Springs, Florida. I'm currently staying at 265 East Penn Isle in Palatka, which is a property that my wife bought. I also own the property in Palatka. So we have a connection to Palatka. We love Palatka. I love the history of Palatka, and not everything that's historic or of historic character has to be from the 1800s. I came here primarily to speak on the item E, but when I saw the picture of the garage up there, I was surprised and shocked, because I think it's an adorable building. And it's obvious that it has historic value. The 1930s, the 1940s, the connection with World War II is significant. The connection with a historic funeral home with horse-drawn hearses or otherwise, to me, is significant. And by coincidence, I was shocked to see the building, because my son, who's an artist, has painted that building. Of the two buildings that he painted in Palatka, he picked that building as one representing the beauty and the architectural character of Palatka. And he loved that paint, and sold at an art show, I think probably the last one. So it is quaint, it is interesting, it's historic. I am confident that somebody would want to buy that particular property. I might be interested in buying that property.
That was my next question, Mr. Lemus. You might want to speak to Ms. Rawls.
I'm going to ask for your phone number afterwards, but I think the demolition request should be denied. The safety concern, there are ways to secure a building. Padlocks are one, better windows are another. It can be secured. And if somebody's around there, call the police. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to speak, or should we close the public comments for now? Okay, seeing that we will close the public comments. I realize that we're not comparing apples to apples here, but what any demolition within the city limits of anything that is historic, I always come back to those wonderful art modern apartments right across the street, matter of fact, from this property that they tore down. Because big plans were afoot to put in a recreational center for youngsters in the community, and this is what we need to keep kids out of trouble. And the apartment buildings went down, and I don't remember how many years ago that was, but we still have a vacant lot. I don't care for demolition. when we acquired the property next door to us and there were a number of shacks on it, which were literally falling down, we still went to the city and said, what do we have to do to be able to take these down? They weren't historic and it was fine, but you just can't put it back after you take it away. And maybe that's me soapboxing.
And I agree to a point with that. And I understand that, you know, we're all citizens of this community and we all love it. I have a business here. I'm raising my son here. My mom moved here to retire. I wasn't gonna start. But I'm gonna talk about both of these properties.
Let's go ahead and stick with the one if we
The
could.
one property is connected to the other property via its neighbors. I would like to do a legacy building. In my mom's name. And have it for the rest of my lifetime for something for me to pass down to my kids. And this property, yes, I can design something, and yes, my husband can build it. We've designed several properties in the city, in the historic district, and we built them, and they've been approved. I was born and raised in California, and I moved here because I love the integrity of the history. I love all the amenities that we have, from the river, the ravines, and everything in between. There is a deep history. However, this is our lives, and this is our integrity, and this is something that we are going to pass down to our children. And I understand it's an historic district, but my full intention is to build a legacy property that will accommodate everybody in the city, from small, quaint, historic looking, commercial on the bottom, and residential like a mixed use. And I will have to come to the board for approval of all the drawings. And that's what I would like to do on this property.
And thank you very much for sharing with us, Ms. Rawls, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not here to talk about your plans for the
Right.
future, however noble or wonderful they may
Right.
be. We're here to talk about an application for demolition.
Right. And part of it is, you know, if it's not gonna be demoed, I'll figure out a way around it. However, it, you know, cost per square foot,
I understand, and I understand.
you know, it's just dealing with older properties, it's difficult to try to incorporate that. And, you know, I just trying to do something great. And like I said, before I was made aware of certain things, this wasn't on my priority list. This wasn't even something that I was thinking about. So 3 months ago, I was in a completely different mindset. This now that has been brought to my attention, you know, is something that needs to be taken care of. And instead of sitting back and doing nothing, I'm, you know, willing to do something about it. But
And thank you, and thank you for sharing, and I lost my mom last year. I get where you're coming from. If I could build her the most wonderful town on earth and put it on the riverfront, I sure would. But that, my friend, is just not what's coming before us today. So thank you for letting us know where you're coming from on this. It always helps to have a little bit of insight, but I think at this point, perhaps we should direct back to the board and get some discussion going and thoughts. Does that make sense? Would someone like to start?
We started with this 2-page information, and I think that's appropriate, that perhaps we do need to take a little time to consider the options of demolition.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson. Other board comments?
I'm struggling a bit because of what was missing for me when I read things earlier was knowledge of historical significance. And given that it appears we don't have a complete picture, we were just going from fantastic memories of some of our citizens here. There does seem to be some, and my heart, goes out to you with what you just shared. And my comment would be, if there was a way to, like you said, you were at a different place 3 months ago, if there was a way to possibly incorporate what you're doing, possibly with retaining this piece, because this is historical, it could be an honor also, but I'm still struggling from the standpoint that if this does have historical significance, to go through with a demo without really maybe confirming more and going through what we were just given in this section of the code. But I'm struggling with that.
Mr. Beaton.
Thank you. Yeah, I too agree with Alan. I'm struggling a little bit about these two buildings. I wish I had time to do a little bit more research on them. The person that I replaced on this board was Clinton Snyder, and hopefully that name does something for some of you, the Conley Snyder Bureau Committee. And Mr. Snyder said during his time on this board that over 50 structures were demolished inside the city of Palatka that were over 100 years old. And you can't bring any of those structures back again. And I think, I don't see the urgency in destroying these buildings until we know just a little bit more about them. And I would like to, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to move that we deny this request, but that we come back. Maybe maybe we need to table the request. Would that be a more appropriate way to do this if we want to bring it back again?
I am not certain. I apologize, I am not certain about that. I think that a reasonable amount of time for delaying a decision is appropriate. If there is any ambiguity on the board. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think it's a wise thing to do if that's the wish of the board.
Okay, well, I'd like to move that we table this case until a time certain of our next meeting, and to give us additional time to look into the history of the buildings and possible appropriate reuse of the buildings. If there's significant, if we find significant value in the history of the building.
We have a motion. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. May I also add that I will not be here next month at this meeting. I've got another obligation. I'm sure that there are other people that can fill in for me, but I just would like to make you aware of that.
Thank you. And I don't believe that we should hold the applicant up because of that, if indeed someone else could take the place to help us. We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, just for the record, in the code, it talks about if you postpone a demolition, consulting with the Putnam County Historical Society. I know Mr. Beaton is the Putnam County Historical Society's representative on this board, although I know that there's board members on this board as well. Is it this board's direction for Mr. Beaton to go to the board of directors on the Historical Society and research more as per the code?
I think that sounds like a good plan of action. Would you agree, Mr. Beaton, Ms. Pierce?
Does that require a motion, Ms. Walsh, or? I'm not familiar with this, I apologize.
Actually, it says, approval of the plans for demolition is required by considerations of reasonable justice, and we are to issue an order postponing the demolition for a period of not to exceed 3 months. So I think I may have misspoken previously. That is if you approve the demolition. If you deny it, there is no direction in this code to also issue such a postponement. However, I don't think that it's an unreasonable idea to do so.
I sort of feel that given our conversation that is appropriate. If both would take it upon themselves and then get back and be able to report at the next meeting. Because we do want to more carefully consider this, but
Absolutely. Might it also be an opportunity for a workshop in the future so we can understand a little more about this concept and how it works?
A workshop on demolition?
Yes.
Of course,
That would be
if that's
awesome.
your desire.
Okay, well, that motion, I believe, has passed. Yes. We will move along to agenda item E, HPB case 2314, a request for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a structure and no stone walls. The address is 221 South 4th Street, Palatka, Florida. Let's begin with staff report.
One moment, please. Okay, as you already know, this is the request for demolition of this project, of this property. And I can give you some background according to what was found in the master site file. And then it says in 1852, the lot where the Sanchez Peterman home sits was conveyed from Isaac Bronson to George Brush, a black man residing in St. Johns County. The following year, Brush, through his legal guardian Robert Boyd, sold the lot to Maurice Sanchez. Sanchez built the home between 1853 and 1860. The framed vernacular interpretation of Greek revival characteristic is one of 9 surviving pre-Civil War buildings in Palatka. The principal elevation is a 2-story entrance divided into an upper and lower floor. Visual distinction of the upper and lower porches is achieved by use of 2 column types. The lower area consists of a continuous masonry wall with piers supporting 6 tapered wood Doric capitals and entablature of wood siding at the 2nd floor level separates the upper and lower zones. The upper area consists of 6 wood porch posts with balustrades. The roof is low pitched pavilion type with molded fascia trim and slight overhang. The proposed demolition is an attempt to bring the property into code compliance in accordance with code case 202205. The structure is in the South Historic District and the request to demolish requires presentation to this board. The applicant provided staff with pictures of the structure and a letter from Robert Morgan, junior engineer. See the exhibits in the letter below. You have the pictures there before you.
Thank you.
I also would like to share that we have received a couple of items from citizens, various citizens regarding this demolition. One of them was a subsequent report from Mr. My apologies. Harlow, Anthony Harlow. And his report basically contradicts the report submitted by Mr. Morgan. Mr. Harlow is an architect, Mr. Morgan is a structural engineer. Both have indicated that they have extensively gone into the structure and evaluated it and arrived at their subsequent opinions. I think there is also some other items that were submitted. Do we have those in our record?
I know the applicant has a presentation.
I'm sorry, what?
The applicant has a presentation and Mr. Harwell has joined via telecommunications.
Great, okay. I know that there's also an item that was submitted, I think was taken from the applicant's previous application to another board regarding the historical significance by pertaining to Lola Sanchez and her involvement in the Civil War. And that is all I have at the moment, unless you'd like to go over any of the reports, but if the people are here in forum or teletechnology, please refer to them. Thank you.
I imagine that notifications were sent out to homeowners in the area. Do you have any response from those?
Not that I have received one.
Thank you. At this stage, I would suggest that Ms. Rawls approach and tell us a little bit more about her thoughts on this.
As was mentioned, there was a neighbor that complained to the code enforcement. October, November of last year. For painting the exterior of the structure. I picked up the phone. I'm more than willing to paint a house. So I had a contractor go over there and pressure wash and paint the house. I got a certificate of appropriateness to paint the house in the exact same colors, which are white and blue. And it was approved. I got the code violation the day after it came registered letter the day after the meeting. So I missed the meeting in December. But I made the meeting in January and I let them know that the painter had not had it on his schedule, but he went out there and pressure washed, but he had not put it on his schedule since the time frame of the construction. After that meeting, he informed me that he would not be painting the second floor of the house as far as the porch because it was unsafe for his men to be on with any equipment whatsoever. So then I had a contractor go out there, and the same day I had, or the day before I had realtors. I hired, I asked Ms. Duck Realty and Ms. Robbie Correa to go out and co-list this house because it was, you know, in their area and they love it too. So I was gonna have it listed and put it up on the market. When I walked through the house with them, this is again, the first time I'd ever been in the house. I've got vertigo really bad and I had to hold on to the wall because the floors are so crooked in there. Robbie Correa stated that she would not take any clients through the front door because of the porch being unsafe. So the next day I had a contractor go out there and look at the house and determine that there was many issues. And so we contacted Mr. Morgan and Morgan evaluated the house. Attached is a letter from what he said. I sent over pictures, additional pictures, and reviewing the house with Mr. Morgan, I can go over the pictures and give you an idea of the condition of this house. It needs a lot more than a paint job. Basically, there is wood destroying organisms that have been in there for years. The house should have been painted at least 10 years ago. I don't know why it's coming up all of a sudden. I have no idea, but all I can say is it was impeccable timing. When I was approached by the neighbor to paint the house, I was burying my father. And then it was the holiday. So I asked for January, just give me a few months, and they couldn't enforce me. So Palatka has not been so friendly, and you know, I'm really trying, but you know, there's only so much a person can do. So I got the letter, and I understand that it's an historical house, but the contractor that is living in the house was supposed to, you know, there was an agreement on the house that he would be maintaining the house and, you know, keeping the house maintained. That end of the deal never happened. So the house has never been painted and it has never been tinted or termites or anything. So it's beyond my control. I've never seen the house until I walked through with Robbie Correa and teed it up. And as far as I'm concerned, after speaking with a structural engineer, not an architect, because architects draw beautiful pictures. You know, this is in his word. So repairing this and main bearing beams and stuff like that is just, you know, very difficult when it's the whole house. If you want to look at some of the pictures that I've taken to show what I'm talking about. So the top, the front porch. The main structure, the main boards, I don't know all the technical terms of what they're called, but they are all basically giving in. This angle is the upper posts are not, the roof load is not on any kind of posts. Basically, the second floor and the first floor should line up. That load is not going, when you have a load, you have a roof load, you have a floor load, and then you have all the walls and windows and doors, and it should all go down to a post on the ground. None of those posts line up because the weight of the roof is pulling in one direction. And all of the beams and everything are just crumbling because of the wood destroying termites.
May I just ask a couple of quick questions? Did you say that someone was living in the house?
Somebody is living in there and
Okay.
they are not paying rent. They haven't been paying rent. My mom is stage 6 of Alzheimer's. So I had no idea that the house was in the condition it was in.
You inherited a number of properties from your,
Yes, I did. And
unfortunately, they all,
there's issues with a lot of them. And I've taken the responsibility and I have done my very best in liquidating them and getting them to people that will do something with them. And I think I've been very successful and I think I've done right by the city, and the residents that live here. I don't want to sell these properties. I absolutely don't. But to hold history is one thing, and to rebuild is another. And I love history. I love all the stories, but this house is unsafe. And right now is having somebody live in a house that's not paying rent is something that I inherited. So now I'm going to have a legal action if I'm trying to be friendly and not go, you know, to the courthouse and formally evict him. I'm not that kind of person. He said he needed until after Easter, so have after Easter and move out.
I apologize, but my question was to be that this home is uninhabitable and it needs to be demolished if someone lives there.
Correct.
I thought I had misheard you.
No, you didn't. Without divulging the full history of how my mom acquired the property. She didn't acquire it on a hateful way. She acquired it to help the person out that's living there and his family. The agreement years ago was known, well, he's going to maintain the property and everything else. That never happened. And it's not like he invited us over or anything to look at the house.
At the risk of sounding horribly insensitive, and believe me, I'm not insensitive, I'm incredibly sensitive. What we have before us is an application to demolish a structure. What I don't believe anyone in the room probably wants to do is spend the rest of the evening figuring out how to get out here.
Okay.
So if you could.
The structure is not, it's not structurally sound. I have given a letter from the engineer and I can go over what points I can make regarding what he's talking about in some of the letters, so you can see where the house is and what condition it is in. So I was going to go through pictures and show you that, you know, all of the columns, if you stand on the side of the house, don't line up anymore. They're all falling in different directions. They don't line up from top floor to bottom floor, so the load is unbalanced. The front beam across the bottom floor between the second floor is caving in. You can slightly see it in that picture. None of the beams on the second floor are holding. That is not supposed to be swagged down. That is supposed to be straight across. The blue ceiling is sagging there as well. This is over the front door when you go in. The beam that looks like it's at a 45 should be straight up, carrying the load of the second floor, including the roof. It is not. It is collapsing under its own weight. The blue you see on the floor is not paint. That is termite damage to where they have eaten from the bottom part of the beam underneath the structure all the way through to the finished floor in the house. And this is several areas. The whole floor is, but I just took a few pictures of different rooms so you can see it's not just in one area, it's throughout the whole house. This is upstairs. You can see the staircase where the boxes are. There is a extreme slant to the floor, making my vertigo go crazy. We put that's a phone, but it's a level. It is not zeroed out. It is a, you know, extreme pitch to where, basically it's like the center of the staircase is just being pushed into the earth. And it's everywhere. It's on both sides of the staircase. None of the posts line up. They're being pushed in different directions. That's the same picture I showed you earlier. So historically, at one point, it was a wonderful house and it carried a lot of historical features. But the condition of the house is falling in on itself. And that is why I'm here today, to just, before it falls in, you know, to demo it.
We understand, and thank you. Did any of the board members have questions for Ms. Ross?
I have just a quick question. You got some structural engineer to come in and look at it. Did you get any contractors come and give you an idea of what it would take to
My
fix it
husband
up?
is a contractor.
What do you say?
Said it would be extremely expensive because you are taking one member out at a time and you are balancing, like holding the rest of building a structure that has to hold the weight of the structure without you taking one piece out and the rest of it collapsing is very difficult and very expensive.
I've had a history of construction, so.
I recently bought a house in Palatka and had it jacked up and had all the timbers under the house replaced.
Is it a single story or a two story?
It's a single story, but I also had work that had to be done in the attic. The house had to be tented.
The second floor is collapsing in out.
Yeah, I understand that. I would think if it were my home and I were coming here to ask, because it's one of 8, did you say? Okay. That I would want to get other opinions. I think having one architect and one engineer go to this house but would not be the thing that I would want to do. I would want more people to look at it and come up with more solutions. I'd be happy to give you the name of the company that I used. They came from Tampa. They did an incredible job. I mean, I have brand new timber under the 100-year-old house, and yeah, it's smaller than this. But to save the house, which was what I wanted to do, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. And I was living in the house while it was going on. I was physically in the house while all of this was happening. So I'll be happy to give you the contact that I have if you're interested. But I think you need to explore more. I think it's not enough to talk to one architect and one engineer about what your problem is. And I sympathize completely. It's a big deal. I also want to tell you, when I moved into my house, I had a homeless person living next door on the porch of an abandoned house.
And the insurance,
Yeah, so that's my other sympathy. She unfortunately chased a child and went to jail and was removed from the porch. So I have sympathy, but I think you need more of the work.
I have great sympathy as well. And I also have sympathy from the fact that my husband is a restoration contractor and everything I suggest we do, he tells me is too expensive. So I know where you're coming from on that. Other board members, and one question, and I would direct this to, I believe Mr. Jefferson is a realtor. Okay. Our homes bought literally sight unseen in historic districts.
Yes. But you get a house that's
So
gonna need work.
I was a real estate agent in California, and I would tell people when they bought a home, I sold HUD homes. And there was no electricity, no water, no warranties, no nothing. You're buying it as is. What you see is what you get, and what you don't see, you also get. And if the structural engineer is telling me that the load-bearing beams and all of the joists in this house are completely rotted and just like crumbling, I think I'm gonna take his word on it because he's a little bit smarter than I am, you know, and jacking up a house. We've had a whole house picked up and held. Over on Diana Drive, I had my roof trusses lifted up and turned 90 degrees to match the other structure that was there. I've done a lot of rebuilding and redoing. Jacking up this house, picking this house up, you know, getting metal I-beams, welding them together and framing the first floor and the second floor and the roof. Main pieces are gonna crumble and fall off. So you're rebuilding the whole thing all over again. It's not salvageable. It's not, there's no part of this house that the main structure is, you know, we're not talking wood siding and patching. We're not talking.
I think we understand this, Ross. And seeing as we don't as a board have other questions for you.
Okay.
Madam Chair. I was just gonna say, agreeing with her, the majority of people on this board have historical homes.
Mhm.
At some point, they have been leveled, they have been restored. My house completely burned, at least the top half in the early 2000s. It was completely rebuilt. Underneath was completely stable. So it's not impossible to stabilize the house.
But, and please bear in mind that I am fairly new to this position, but, and realizing that we have not gotten to public comment, et cetera, et cetera. But would I be remiss in asking the question of the board members themselves? Is anyone feeling that approving demolition of this structure is something that will happen tonight? May I ask that?
Of course.
Okay. Is anybody getting a great feeling about this? No, okay. I just want to kind of get an idea of where we're at, because I don't want Ms. Rawls to stand here half the night explaining to us. And, you know, I don't want folks who are here for public comment, you know, to sit half the night. I'm not saying that I necessarily want to move this along, but I did want to kind of get an atmosphere of the board and how we're feeling. So based on that, would it be possible to go ahead and move on to public comment because we do have some speaker cards? Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and open the public comment section. And what I would ask is, if you would please, let's, if something has been mentioned once or twice, I'm not sure if it needs to be mentioned a third, fourth, or fifth time. But let's go ahead and start with Mr. Lemus. Thank you, sir.
You need my address again.
I believe we have it.
All right. I'm opposed to the demolition. I did not expect to be here as a semi-expert. I'm an attorney. I know a couple things. I've been an attorney for almost 43 years. It seems that there's a problem with a tenant. Used to be one of my expertise. If the tenant is causing a problem or impeding the restoration, the tenant goes. I also know that if the tenant is living there, it is by definition habitable. So if there's some deflection, that's a problem to be corrected. Over the last 43 years, part of what I've been doing is construction litigation, defect litigation. I've consulted with Al DeBonis of the Wood Institute, Byron Lamont, Florida entomologist, two of the premier names in the country. I've hired more engineers and contractors than I can shake a stick at. There is no house made of wood that can't be repaired. I know of instances where houses, I'm talking about brick houses, have been moved. I think it was across a lake to be restored on a new spot, and I believe that was in Winter Park. There is no house that can't be shored up, salvaged. There's different types of mechanisms by which they can pneumatically level a house. I forget the technical name for it, but this is a house that should be saved, and it can be saved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ms. Garris?
I think as some people have said, there's different opinions on things, depending on who's giving the opinion. I'm going to refer to a packet, it's something you have in your packet, which is an inspection of the existing structure by Anthony Harwell, architect, and architects do know more about structures than painting drawings do. And you have to know all the technical things about constructing a building and all that. And I'll tell you, Tony Harwell is probably as knowledgeable about historic construction repair as anybody I've ever seen. And I know a little bit from my personal experience. There was a metal roof put on by the previous owner, the current tenant, and it was tinted by that gentleman. If you look through his whole, he calls it inspection. He said that they're in conclusion, and the gist of it is that the materials and the principles by which these types of homes were built is much superior to what homes are built today. The wood is old growth wood. It's has a lot of tensile strength. It's there. You're going to have termites anywhere in Florida, especially I found by water. They are attracted to humidity. And it's an ongoing thing. If you have a wood house, you're going to have to spot treat it or tint it. If you tint it, they can crawl back in there the next day. It's just part of living in Florida where the tropics. In his conclusion, he said this structure is one of the very few left from the estimated build time period that preserves the building material sections and techniques used that differentiates it from its successors. In other words, it's built like a brick ship, or however you say that. It appears it has been suffering from lack of proper maintenance, and for many years it does not warrant demolition. I'm going to say again, I've watched this in my personal life, a house that had to be taken down to the studs. and the wiring, the plumbing and everything was replaced. And yes, when you buy a historic home, you better be ready to spend your money or move on, go somewhere else, sell it to somebody else. Sell it to somebody else, because this is a very significantly historic home. Well, Sanchez was a spy in the Civil War, and how can you replace that?
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Ms. Kitchens?
I live with Kitchens 1027 South Twelfth Street, Black, Florida. I sympathize with Ms. Rawls. I live in a house built in 1876. I had it jacked up behind me. My house movers in 2006. They asked me when the house was built. I asked them what they think. They thought it was built in the late 50s because all the timbers under the house built in 1876 look brand new. I personally would like to see photos of the underneath structure of the house to confirm that every cell is rotten, but that's neither here nor there. This house is very historical, and looking at the information provided by the planning director, I would say it's every bit as historical as the Bronson Mulholland House, and maybe a bit more historical. The Bronson Mulholland House was built in 1853. This one was built in 1854. This house was built in 1853. Judge Bronson built the Bronson House. Judge Bronson sold this property to a black man named George Brush. That brings into black history. The Bronson House was occupied by the Union Army during the war. This house was occupied by a Confederate spy during the war. So this is a very historic house. And if it had not been a codes violation, I don't think we'd be coming here today for you all to talk about demolition. So I have a couple of recommendations. First, I would ask you to agree with the staff and not demolish the house. I would further ask that you recommend to the city of Palatka Commission, it's going to the commission, that you recommend to them that they give this house the same opportunity that they gave to Central Academy of all cities blacklist for now. Central Academy is a pile of rubble. I have no problem with it being preserved. This is the Black Daily News for the record. There's what Central Academy looks like. It's one wall and a pile of rubble. The city took it off the blacklist. I would ask that you recommend to the city that they remove this house at least temporarily, because it's super historical. It does have black history. A black man owned this property. He very well might have built this house. And so that it ties with black history, it ties in with Confederate history, it ties in with Florida history. It's a very important house. If you can get off the demolition list, get off the codes enforcement list, give the Rawls time to investigate and see if they can get historic grants related to black history, related to Florida history, related to history, to repair this house, and that would help them with the price, but they need the time to be able to research that. The Bronson house was every bit as bad as this, because you probably remember. Basically, the wall was torn up, the plastic was off the wall, it was rotted, the porches were gone, it was horrible. Grants were got 27. So I would say, please don't demolish the house, but recommend to the city commission, you can recommend it, that they remove that they at least suspend the codes violation to give the Rawls time to try to find historic money to repair and salvage this house, which can be repaired and salvaged. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kitchen. I love how everybody speeds up at the end. Do we have anyone else who would care to speak to us in public comment, or with a differing perspective than what we've already heard from the majority of the audience?
Madam Chair, if I may, Mr. Anthony Harwell is on via Zoom. I know his report's been referenced a few different times. I don't know if you wish to call upon him to speak. Obviously, he hasn't filled out your speaker's card because he's in Zoom land, but I
was under the impression that because we were given a copy of his analysis, and also because it was addressed by Ms. Garris, that we had heard from Mr. Harwell, either by reading his report or by listening to Ms. Garris. So I hadn't intended, but if you think I should, I will.
Just on your notes there.
Okay, well, I believe, have we all had a chance to look at this analysis, the same as we had a chance to look at the structural analysis that was brought to us by Mr. Rawls? Okay. If Mr. Harwell has something different or new to tell us, then I would welcome his comments, but we hear you loud and clear, sir.
No, I have nothing else to add. It's all in the inspection report.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, hearing that, let's go ahead and close the public comment section of the meeting. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a request for a COA to demolish the structure, something that we've all said is not a decision that we're comfortable with on any level. I personally had already kind of made a note that perhaps we could ask code enforcement to just back off and let's see what we can do to make this entire situation a little bit easier on the Rawls family. With time being of the essence, obviously. I thought that was a great idea, and it was further evidenced by Ms. Kitchen's comments. I agree that
One comment for code enforcement, I had until April, their next meeting to come up with a decision on painting the house.
okay. So I'm sorry, did they already suspend?
They gave me an extension till April,
Okay, and what was that extension given?
January,
Okay. So we would be asking code enforcement for
but I couldn't get on last month's agenda because
An
it was already
extension.
too late.
to an extension. Well, you know what? It's worth trying.
Yeah,
So
I tried.
Yeah.
I'm not dragging my feet by any means, but I appreciate Electric Kitchens for putting that out there because I didn't think that was an option for code enforcement to, I don't know, close the case or back off the case for a while so I can figure out, because it doesn't just need painted. And it's kind of ridiculous for the Historic Society or South Side to ask me to paint or
there's so many other different
things
issues.
when there's other issues.
I totally understand that. And I also understand through purchasing a property that had extensive fines through code enforcement that you can always go to them and say, look, we happened on this situation. We did our best. We came up with a solution. Can the fines be waived? But I cannot suppose what the code enforcement board might do because we're not them. But I think that every single possible avenue that we can try, whether it's once, twice, or 5 times, needs to be tried again and again. And, if there's some kind of a grassroots thing where we all say that, this
Make a
house is important.
suggestion. Yeah, and if we can make a suggestion for it, I think they would be open to hearing from you guys more than just the person who's getting their hands slapped.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Wells, for clarifying that. Board, where are we on this? Where are we leaning?
Madam Chair, I actually had a question for you. Ms. Rawl? Ms. Rawl? Because what I'm thinking is, yes, I'm not in favor of demo. I would recommend that you get multiple experts to evaluate this further if you are continuing to think through and consider coming back or appealing or from because you have that right to from what decision that we make. But are you willing to dig further to understand? I think Mr. Rosa had made.
Yeah, I'm willing to get another, couple other opinions. As far as the house, it just seems like everything is, I'm not leading my own, cart. I'm being pushed into this because,
Right. Because once go to
so it's like,
enforcement gets involved in the timetables and
and their letter is like plainly, it's, you got 10 days to just start finding it. Thanksgiving and Christmas, it just feels like their hands are around my throat and.
Well,
they
have a job to do.
They do have a job to do and I appreciate it.
They can be sensitive.
Yeah, and they've been very, very sensitive to it and they've worked with me very well. And I would like a little bit more time to, reassess what I can do.
I want to understand.
Yeah, I'm willing to work with, things and what I'm not willing to do is I'm not willing to, just be shoved into something and be forced to fix up a house when, I only had time to get one person out there,
Okay, thank you very much once again. Board members, where are we leaning? Mr. Beaton.
Madam Chair, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion, and if someone wants to make a second motion regarding the issue about code enforcement, but my motion will not contain that. Madam Chair, I'd like to move that the board deny the request for demolition of the structure at 221 South Fourth Street, primarily based on information in the Florida Master Site File about the historic significance of this structure. It being one of the very few pre-Civil War structures still left in Palatka, and a significant history of the house, which reference to that appears in several well-known historical books written on Civil War history in Florida.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have 2 seconds. Who would like to? Thanks for your seconds. We have a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion amongst the board? If not, let's call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Larry Beaton,
Yes.
Mr. Chris Hollister,
Yep, yes.
Mr. Timothy Jefferson,
Yes.
Ms. Brianna Pierce,
Yes.
Ms. Mary Jane Rosa,
Yes.
Vice Chair Allen Sheffield,
Yes.
Chair Van Winston.
Yes,
Motion passed unanimously.
thank you very much. Would someone like to?
Madam Chair, I'd also like to move that we request that code enforcement suspend any further penalties to give the applicant time to do further research and come back with a plan as to how she would proceed.
Time.
Yes, by our next meeting or.
Let's give it 2 months. I'm not really sure what code enforcement schedule is, and it needs to be noticed and et cetera, correct?
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'm not certain, I'm pretty sure we can't ask another board to take action.
Okay.
I think that we could give the applicant time to request it, but we cannot direct another board to take action.
Can we come up with a cheerful little letter saying, hi, we're the historical board, and we're hoping that, you can help us out with this?
Can they make a recommendation?
Well, Ms. Walsh, let me approach it this way. Because this board is requesting that the applicant go back and take certain actions before we can further deliberate and make a decision. I'd like to make that recommendation. And they have to make the call whether they want to do it or not. But I still think it would be appropriate. If we've asked her if she's doing something at our request and that we know it's going to take time to have the clock or the cash register continue to churn, I don't think it's appropriate. But like you said, they have to make that call, but I'd like to see if we can make that recommendation. I don't know what it is.
If we can, we'd like to, and if it's not appropriate, then.
I don't think it's appropriate.
Okay.
I don't think it's, I understand what you're saying. You have motions to deny and approve that denial for demolition.
Yes.
That stands.
Okay.
The code enforcement is a whole separate board, a whole separate issue.
Okay.
And that would be between Ms. Ross and code enforcement. It's not a code enforcement board.
I'm not sure if we can, after the fact, open up to public comment and.
I have 2 things. I'm sorry. Right.
I got a nod. Can we keep it extremely brief?
Yeah. I promise.
You don't have to do the washing. Come on up.
Firstly, the Mellon House was very recently in similar circumstance pertaining to both the historic board and the code enforcement. And they were, I've been told they are still being fined daily, but they were allotted additional time to get, and Alan should be able to speak on that.
And I can speak to that because at that meeting though, a representative from code enforcement was here.
Yeah.
And they
was,
heard that request and stepped up and said they allow that.
So it can be done.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if I should say this, probably even if I need to go to them myself or whatever and let them know that it's been made from this board as a recommendation, even if that's totally up to them to allow.
And secondly, the CRA the Monday before last, had their distribution meeting. And the home, I believe, was on the list, I thought. And, I think it was scored possibly high enough. It was not scored high enough, or it wasn't on the list. I'm sorry, I attended that meeting and I really thought that that house was on the CRA distribution list.
I'm sorry, Ms. Roach, I did not hear your question.
Okay,
All right, so what you're saying, Ms. Roach, is there are other possible avenues.
the CRA, did give them a high enough score to possibly be considered. And Monday is the CRA meeting, and I thought that house was on that list. I could be misspoken, but I was at the meeting.
I'm not familiar, I've not been involved in that process, I can't answer.
Okay. But you might want to look into that.
The grant, are you referring to the grant from the?
Yeah, ladies, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. I'm so sorry. You know what? No, let's,
I need to clarify something that you all made a mistake on.
okay.
But it's, I won't.
Now, please understand that, we're not really sure any longer why we're here. And everything that I'm hearing sounds like fantastic conversation for the parking lot amongst very good friends that have different ideas of how to solve a big, delicate, wonderful, historical enigma. And I don't feel like we need to keep staff here for this purpose or the board here for this purpose. So if it's okay, so I don't want to let her to the editor because I already got called.
I'm saying this commission anyway. I just wanted you all to do something and you did the opposite of what I suggested. I don't think you understood what I said. I was trying to clarify. That's okay. It's no problem. I don't need you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kitchens.
Appreciate it.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, I believe we've satisfied to the best of our personal ability tonight that particular agenda item, and that brings us to agenda item 5, staff comments.
I have none.
Madam Chair, I know it's getting late. I had predicted 7:30. I didn't know how accurate I was going to be tonight. Ms. Walls, could you give us any kind of update about anything you've heard back from the contractor about the new historic survey?
Yes, I can do that. The contractor staff has been out surveying the neighborhood. They have completed the North Historic District and they should be about, I think they said, as of Tuesday, they were about 25% of the way through the South Historic District.
Super.
So we're making good progress. Back to, I don't know if this is even appropriate now, but back to the code enforcement thing, I don't think it would be inappropriate for the board to express support for the applicant to approach code enforcement with that request.
I think that would be wonderful. Do we all agree on that?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Seeing no other business, and before us, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.